Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another exclusive Fireside chat for PE Forum. Today, we welcome Adam Niewiński. He's the co-founder and managing partner of OTB Ventures. He has over 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur before becoming an investor. His fund, OTB Venture, is a pan-European VC fund. It specializes in early growth stages, late seed, and Series A. Their AUM is around 300 million. And a key point is that Adam has been also focusing in the past decade around space investment and sovereign investment in Europe. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Hello, my pleasure.
So I want to start with a direct question. You just announced opening or expanding a presence in Luxembourg, and I wanted to understand, what was the opportunity there and why this focus in growing more geographies within Europe.
Sure. So basically, like we've always been a pan-European deep tech fund. So we are constantly searching for opportunities throughout Europe. We're mainly focused on European Union, obviously, but not only. Meaning this is our, I would say, home market. We sometimes look around and go beyond that. But we've been doing this successfully for the last basically now 7 or 8 years. And this is a human focused business, meaning if you see great people, if you see great talent, you follow the talent. So we've spotted an opportunity to grow our team in Luxembourg. And like this, I would say, motivated us to think whether, like opening an office in Luxembourg actually can make sense. So whether, like tapping on the talent that we, like seem to be able to get, or we had a pleasure, like to secure, whether it's a good, like place to open an office. And actually, we've been present in Luxembourg for quite some time. So we already have 2 companies located there, Hydrosat and ClearSpace, both European Investment Bank and European Investment Fund are located there. So, like I've been coming to Luxembourg basically every month or so. So we've known the market very well. And the answer wasn't that difficult for us, whether this is the market that we want to focus even more, that we want to, like to call our second home. And especially that the Luxembourg government is super serious and super professional about investing in deep tech, with a special focus on what we actually have always been looking at, which is space tech, physical AI. Also these days, probably some of like more dual use cases, which like we've never been shy of, and we've been always, like an active player in dual use tech. Just to mention that NATO Innovation Fund is also one of our LPs.
Mhm.
So all in all, it seemed to be for us like a perfect setup,
Mhm.
like to have, like the right people at the right time in the right place. So I would say the decision for us was fairly obvious.
So it was a natural progression or expansion for you. And thank you. You made my job easier because you've helped me move on to our first topic, which is exactly this European sovereignty, tech investment, and also a bit of space tech. And so I wanted to see your view on the global tech landscape for Europe, and particularly some of the topics that you've mentioned, deep tech, AI, and also dual use or space related. How do you see us? There's a lot of uh, debate going on today on on various levels. But how would you compare what is happening in Europe in this field versus, let's say, the US and China?
So I can speak probably more about Europe versus US because, like frankly speaking, when it comes to deep tech and especially dual use in China, it's not really the market that international VCs are very much present there. I would say especially over the last few years, but comparing, like Europe to the US, I think what we are seeing right now, it's a major change, a major shift. So frankly speaking, US has always been very entrepreneurial in all, I would say, technology areas, including space tech, including dual use. And they seem to be early movers with this respect. However, like Europe has always had an amazing talent pool. So a number of technical universities, basically each and every large, not even big, but like mid-sized city would have a good, like either university or technical university, and a lot of super talented, technically talented people, which is a base for deep tech development. Like we've been doing deep tech for the last 8 years or so, ever since we started. So it's not that, like originally we were a generalist VC, then a climate tech VC, then a, like crypto VC, and now a deep tech VC. Like we've been deep tech focused from the get-go. So we've seen the talent, we've seen great ideas, but basically we had to look for both financing, later stage financing, and even more the market outside of Europe. This is related, unfortunately, to the fact that European corporates, European enterprises are not really consuming too much of a deep tech. They are, I would say, more of a followers, or they used to be more of a followers when it comes to advanced technologies. And similarly, I would say the governmental institutions. The great thing that has changed over the last first years and more recently, even weeks. So there were two, I would say, very important, like events. The first one, which was obviously tragic, is the beginning of the war in Ukraine. And the second one are, like the elections in US. So the first one has opened the discussion about dual use and about more active use of deep tech and innovative tech by the governments, and especially obviously defense. So defense in Europe, like over the last basically 50 years, haven't changed much. So tanks were obviously more modern, like helicopters have become, like a bit faster, a bit better. But all in all, like the tech stayed pretty much the same. This has significantly changed after the war started, because Ukraine proved to show that using new technologies, using advanced intelligence, satellite intelligence, using advanced telecommunication systems, using advanced methods like drones, and so on and so forth, changes the battlefield completely. And this opened the eyes of several nations and several DoDs, the Department of Defense, that they actually need to work with private sector and the deep tech to advance. And then obviously the second major event, US elections, and US pretty much showing that they may cut a lot of ties with Europe, with European industry, whether through introducing the tariffs or I would say having a completely different political agenda. This may Europe think about focusing on its own tech, on its own strengths, and building on it. So all in all, I would say if you ask me 4 years ago, I would tell you, you know, like Europe, it's a great place to invent, and then scaling is only happening in US because of financing and because of the market. Today, I'm actually much more optimistic about European growth of tech because European institutions like EIF, EIB are super serious about providing later stage financing for the deep tech, for advanced tech. And we also see a major change in the thinking of governments, you know, like governmental institutions, as well as some of the corporates already, that they want to work with European partners, European institutions, European startups, and give them a chance and help them flourish rather than leave them for the US to swallow.
It's very interesting what you're saying. So you see that there's a greater acceptance today around dual use technologies, and when you say support startups, we have two levels. We have the level of what you guys do, which is funding them, but there's also the commercial side. And I remember, at the conference where you made a very good point, and you said, these startups need contracts. Are you seeing, and that was a couple of years ago, but are you seeing this happening? Is that what you mean? You see that when you talk about corporates and about other institutions, you see more contracts going out, which is basically what made the US market. And is this this transformation that you're going through?
I see the beginning of this. So I wouldn't say that it's, like it's flourishing as it has been the case in the US. To be very honest, like US governmental institutions are probably the most important buyer/partner for deep tech startups. As you mentioned, they provide long-term contracts, they provide stability, they provide also, credibility for the startups, and they are patient. So they can, give a R&D contract for a given tech to be developed. If US Army decides that they need an advanced tech I would say in any area, they would source it from private companies which are working on it and obviously releasing more and more funding as they see progress. At the end, to have the technology, like at the cheapest and fastest pace, which is only offered by the private sector. This has never happened in Europe before, but now I see the beginning of this, so in the past, like there were a handful of companies, I would probably say 2 or 3, that would provide 90% of, for instance, space technology or space defense and air solution. And, like this was very comfortable for both sides, meaning for the governments, they've had a trusted partner, stable, large, fairly reliable. And for those companies, because, like it was semi-oligopoly, like no need, like to rush, no need, like to stretch too much. But this is not the best way to provide progress in the most efficient way. And as mentioned, the best way is basically to allow the free market to run and fund them as they go. So, like if you see progress, you get more funding. If you see progress, you get more funding. Obviously, like SpaceX would be a classical example of this that everyone knows. But it's not just SpaceX, like these are, I would say, dozens of examples like this, especially in US. In Europe, again, we see the beginning of this, like we see European Space Agency working more and more with startups, like in various areas, from rocket launchers to in-space servicing, like with Clear Space, and this is the way to go. And of course, like the beginnings are always difficult. The beginnings are always difficult both on the institutional side and on the startup side, because each and everyone needs to establish new roles, like kind of rules of engagement. They need to understand and learn each other. But without this, we won't have fast and efficient progress. And again, I'm happy to say today that I see this changing a lot, both ranging from large public institutions through the governments, through the DODs, Department of Defenses, ending up with some of the European enterprises, which again are still lagging behind. I would say that today we see more push from governments and governmental institutions than from enterprises to really locally source the best possible tech.
If we go to the other side, as you develop tech, you also need financing, you need VCs, you need others, and it's very clear, and I agree with what you say, that the EIF and other European institutions have been ramping up their support. Uh, what about the other LPs? What about family offices? What about other pension funds that are very active in the US, even in the VC space and the deep tech space? Investing in managers. Are they still shy because of uh, lack of knowledge, or because they feel that this dual use is still too touchy for them?
Uh, Again, like it's a tectonic shift that has happened over the last few years, like back 4 years ago, mentioning dual use was, like a kind of, like the word that everyone was afraid of. Today, everyone is running to invest in defense tech because everyone understands that, like Europe needs to spend hundreds of billions of euros to substantially ramp up the advancement of their defense systems. So everyone understands that, like the broadly speaking defense sector is gonna be, in a way, to be perfectly honest, flooded with money. And then the big question is where to invest those money. Obviously, you can buy a lot and produce a lot of tanks, but I think a lot of people realizes that this is not the most efficient way of spending the defense budgets. That conflicts and the defense lays more on hybrid offense and then defense, rather than straight, tanks and artillery and so on. So to protect yourself, you need to have resilience. You need to have your own telecommunication system. You need to have your own intelligence. And by intelligence, it means you need to have your own satellite information. And satellite information from different sources. You need SAR, synthetic aperture radar. You need optical. You need infrared. You need all the sensors to have a perfect understanding of what's happening on your borders, within your country, and potentially outside of your borders. So the intelligence is super important. What's also super important is, like making this sustainable, meaning not that easy to be dismantled and, like to collapse. So it's not only that you need to have this intelligence, but you need to know how to protect this intelligence system. So this is both, like in space, for instance, security, as well as, I would say, typical cybersecurity, which is equally important. And this is true not only to protect your intelligence, but to protect your system, to protect your ground operations, to protect telecommunications. It's all interrelated. In order to do it right now efficiently, you need to have good AI. You need to have, like super advanced systems that are much better than of the potential of offensive party. So this is, I would say, the new reality of a hybrid battlefield. So do you still need tanks and artillery? Probably.
Mhm.
But, like, do you need to spend majority of money on it? I don't think so. Majority should need to be spent, on your overall country resilience and stability, and then, like to protect physically the borders, which I would say is the second step. And even more so, like some of the countries, I would say, especially bordering countries with potential offensive countries, like probably need to spend a bit more on physical, um, uh, like protection of borders. But countries which I would say are not that obviously being um, of a risk of being attacked these days, let's say like Spain, like they already, experience, like cyber threats, like they already experience a hybrid attacks in order, like to destabilize the country and to destabilize the European Union system. So this is, I would say, a completely new reality, which is happening mostly digital, which is, like happening in I would say using super advanced AI systems, and you need to ramp it up on the defense side as well to be able to protect yourself.
It's very clear that there's a shift that is happening, and that there is a bigger focus today on protecting and sovereignty and resilience. How do you see the national versus the European investment landscape? Many of these countries, you mentioned they should have different strategies as well, but they also have different. They might have different interests or different goals. You are pan-European, so you have a clear view of what is happening in all of Europe. Do you see that there's within the startup ecosystem and the VCs in particular a greater awareness that we Europeans from different countries need to invest, work together, find solutions together, or is it still because of the anchor or the LP or the contract giver a very national view of the sector?
Uh, Again, I think it changes a lot, and I'm really happy about it because like I do believe that like united we stand, and that the beauty of Europe, it's obviously like it's very diverse, but then like we have so much in common. But in order to protect this, we need to act together. And the more we act together, the more we unify as much as possible, the stronger market we are, like the stronger we can respond towards any adversaries, whether, like economical or I would say also military. So for us to protect our lifestyle, for us to protect, our culture, we need to stay strong and we need to stay united because, each and every one is too fragile towards global adversaries, but united, we are super strong.
That's true.
And I kind of believe and kind of see that it changes. And of course, it's not a smooth and easy process. And of course, each and every country would have a bit of their own objective. There are even countries which seemed to be doing a lot to derail this, whether
Which ones? I don't want to put you on the hot spot.
No, but it's almost obvious that someone is founding it, to stop it, to prevent it, which is obviously, absurd situation.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, I see willingness to build, to use the strength, try to, to build on each and every country's strength, on each and every country needs, and try to find, a compromise. And just as it is to some extent in US, each and every state in US is a bit different. Each and every state would have its own strengths and weaknesses. And each and every state has its own, I would say, of course, far less freedom than each and every country in European Union. But then the strength of US lays in acting together. So I don't think European Union needs to be like United States. We can invent our own way, but there is a lot that it's good for us to source from them in order to be able to have our own way and not to be just, I would say, how to say it delicately, not, to allow us to remain, to do whatever we want to do and not to be pressed by someone else.
Understood. Let's move on to a second theme, which is scaling European startups, and within what you do and your investment in deep tech, where do you see the biggest growth opportunities for European startups in the, let's say, next 5 years? Whether it's on a specific theme, we talk, people throw buzzwords, generative AI, robotics, whatever. What do you see really of let's say top 2, top 3 sector precisely where you're excited about and you see great progress happening and you see a great opportunity as well?
So, I would say there are three to four large, I would say, mega trends. The first one we already briefly spoke about is it's space tech. I would complement it by something that we may call physical AI or robotics. Robotics would be probably more of an old word. Physical AI, a bit newer one, but it all comes to the same thing, like space technology and robotics. Super big topics. We see a lot happening there, space technology is no longer, like a fiction of Star Wars. It's something that each and every country desperately needs to operate, and more enterprises embrace this as well. Robotics comes into manufacturing in a big way, and it's only going to be more of this. We're going to see more and more of intelligent physical, like robotics, physical AI advancing. And so this I would call one big mega trend. The second one, it is actually, like enterprise AI and data. So this is very much advancing, and we will, I would say, the technology will be completely different 5 years from now. It's a super strong, super big trend. like one may assume that within the next 5 to 10 years, 90% of code it's gonna be written by AI. So rather than armies of like software engineer and coders, it's gonna be just like being wrote by AI. This is gonna be transformational for many software companies, like especially those companies which are trying to develop some systems for some corporations, and that there is a lot of those companies flourishing. They need to reinvent themselves fast because it's coming and it's coming in a big way. Obviously, this is gonna be interlinked with all sorts of data management, uh, ranging from some of the data sources coming from IoTs, so all the possible, like small sensors pretty much everywhere, collecting this data, sending this data, clearing this data, analyzing this data, understanding this data, and making decisions based on this data. And it's all gonna be done automatically. So I would say I know that there is a hype on generative AI, but AI, both LLMs and micro AI and all sorts, I would say, of AI solutions are gonna be super transformative over the next literally 5 to 10 years time. It's gonna be super fast. Last, I would say something that we can say next generation computing. And here I would put a few subsectors starting from semiconductors. We see a lot of technological progress in how semiconductors are being designed and manufactured. And we will only see more of this in order to power the AI, which we will be using. We need a huge advancement in semiconductors space, like they need to be faster, they need to be more efficient. They cannot use that much of energy as they use right now. And this will come for sure. So this is one area. Second area in next-gen computing that we see, obviously quantum. We are actually still away from commercial use of this, but it shall come within the next few years. And lastly, like all other progress in including, like the technologies which interlinks human brain with computers. So we see a few strong trends on the horizon, and I would say those three big, I would say, waves are gonna be transformative for the technology globally.
And so if we move back again into the founders and the later stage of financing in Europe, we've had cases of companies, without going into mismanagement or whatever sort, but once they reach the later stage of financing, in order to move to the next phase, they kind of it's fizzled down. Do you think that this landscape is evolving as well?
You mean the landscape of
Later stage financing, later stage when companies needs the 200 million, 300 million that you get in the US, but you seem have, we seem to have more difficulties when startups reach this phase. So again, is it, is there a lacking piece? Do you see it evolving and you're optimistic about it, or do you think that there's something that needs to be shaken up in order for it to happen?
It is evolving. It's evolving in a good direction. It's evolving too slow, and we need more of that.
Mm-hmm.
If we look again at the US and we look, let's say, at the recently announced or being about to close $40 billion round of OpenAI. Unfortunately, I can hardly still imagine something like this in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, first you need to have companies like OpenAI, and it's being, I would say, driven by non-US investor, which is SoftBank. But still, we definitely need more push for later stage financing as well. We need to get involved pension funds. This is something, that we've been talking at the beginning of our discussion. We don't really have European pension funds being involved in investing in tech. This is absurd. In US, this can be up to 15% of the pension funds, because investing in tech is super profitable. It's just long-term investment.
Mm-hmm.
And they are, pension funds and endowments and foundations are the keepers of the long-term funding. If they want to play safe, if they don't care about making more money and making the difference, they can keep on investing in bonds. But, bonds won't bring them good returns, and bonds won't make them, any progress. So I really feel this is, again, something that needs to change. We need to activate. I'm not saying, to flood the market with money.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, reaching 15%, which is, more or less the benchmark level in US, is gonna take us 5-10 years. But we need to start doing this. We need to start changing this, because otherwise we won't have good security for the future, meaning pensions, because they're gonna be super small, and we won't make the economic growth, because it's a flywheel effect. It's not only that by pension funds making them invest in VCs and in technology, broadly speaking. Sorry, it's not only about bringing better returns for the pensions. It's also about bringing bigger growth of the GDP of the economy, which again going to stimulate all the other areas and all the other, I would say, parts of the economy. So this is critical. And of course, there are some regulatory challenges. It's not that, it's just the laziness, but there's a lot to be done.
And going to the regulatory side, you're pan-European VCs and you have a vast base of LPs. If you compare, a fundraising effort of a US VC within the US compared to a European VC across Europe, on the regulatory base, is it more difficult for Europeans, or has things been smoothened out for them?
Fundraising from the regulatory perspective, it's not something much more difficult in Europe than in US. The challenges are the money pools, because as you've mentioned, in US you've got dozens of pension funds, endowments, foundations, family offices, all of them investing in tech, and they understand that they can make a lot of money. They need to be a bit more patient, but it's the best, allocation of the patient capital is in tech. If anyone has any doubts, they can look at, any stock indexes of tech. They can look about all the companies which are now some of the biggest companies globally. They were all VC funded. These are all tech companies, or maybe not all, but predominantly. So this is the way to go. And if you look at the VC returns, over the time, they are really strong. And there is, some misperception that VC is riskier. As an asset class, it's not. Obviously, I don't expect in my portfolio all the companies to survive. I wouldn't be surprised if even 1/3 of them are gonna collapse. But this is the portfolio strategy and portfolio level. And typically, even one company can be a fund returner. And a few companies can make, the return successfully a few times the fund, and of course, it's not that each and every fund is going to be returned 3 or 4 times. But in reality, if you look at the returns of VCs, they are very strong, especially in Europe. And in Europe, you see even better returns these days in VC funds than in US, just because it's a lower competition, a lower valuation, and still a lot of opportunities. And I believe especially deep tech is going to bring a lot of opportunities for Europe.
Yeah. So I want to move on to your personal journey, your personal experience. Uh, First of all, I know that you're passionate about art and you're also passionate about uh, underwater. So is that how you think? You isolate yourself with art and underwater to think better, and this helps you make better decisions?
Uh, Sorry. I think everyone needs to have, a bit of rest from time to time, especially, to to make your brain rest for a few hours or so. And yes, I love modern art, and this is my passion. I find it, just beautiful, and enjoy spending time with modern art. Obviously, sport is another way of clearing the mind, whether underwater with diving or any other, I would say, sports, whether it is skiing or just, gym on a regular basis. I believe that helps to clear the mind, that makes, your mind to rest and being able then to work hard during the weekday. I think this is, just a hygienic way of making, brain do something else for a few hours and then come back to, I would say, regular um, job. And yeah, that's the way, I'm trying to rest and especially make my brain rest.
And so if you throughout your career, you stepped from being a banker to a VC, and you faced, I'm sure, various challenges. What was the biggest within on your personal, evolution within your career? What was the biggest challenge that you faced?
Sorry for that. Um, Honestly, I think that was 2009 global financial crisis. Being in banking, being in wealth management, um, in asset management, trying, to protect the assets, trying to survive the storm, trying to keep calm myself and my team. I guess that was the single most difficult experience and challenge. I remember actually, hiring a team of psychologists for the workshops with my employees, with my team, to help them deal with the stress. Because, they started to open up each day in the computer as they were waking up at 6 a.m. to see how are the indexes in Japan, standing. And
Nothing was standing at the time.
yeah, as they were falling. Um, and they were trying, like to use, I don't know, kind of a um, Yoda style from Star Wars, trying to steer into the indexes and I don't know, make them change the direction by just watching at them, which of course wasn't really happening. But that was, like really difficult and really frustrating. And yeah, at some point, I decided to hire a group of experienced psychologists to do workshops with my team, and it really helped. It helped them, like to manage their emotions, to manage the emotions of the clients, and I think it was equally important. And yeah, we've made it successfully coming out of it.
And was this is taking care of your own and your team and facing adversity? Was this something that made you say, well, you know what, I don't want to face anything that stressful again, or that this gave you more power and strength to uh, dive in more?
No, I think definitely the latter one, like like the markets are cyclical, like sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, and it needs to be like this, like when we've been experiencing, like 2022 basically, like the craziness of the tech market, like I was really afraid, like I knew it's not gonna end well. And I was actually praying for the slowdown to come, because I knew that the faster it's gonna come, the, there is a chance that it's gonna be more shallow,
Mhm.
and easier to like to go through. And so for me, the lesson is, like you need to be strong, you need to make it through, you need to, like to survive. And there's always, sun coming at some point. You just need to get ready sometimes for a bit more waiting, for a bit more harsh conditions. And yeah, you just need to be ready to weather it. That's it.
And you look into these features in the founders that you invest in, and is this a process? How do you make sure that they have the tough skin to carry their project and their venture?
I think this is one of the most important thing, like for the founder, to be strong, to be resilient. I tend to say that, like a perfect founder should have a super strong view and be super quick to change it. Because on one hand, you need to be determined, you need to be, like fearless and focused. But at the same time, once the conditions are changing, you need to adopt, you need to, like change the way you think almost immediately and move on.
Adam, I think these are very good concluding words to our conversation. I thank you very much. It was very insightful and gave us a great view of what is happening in Europe. And it's quite an optimistic view, and I'm happy that you shared it with us. Thank you so much.
I had great pleasure. Thank you so much.